Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now in today's video we're going to take a look at a multi-tool shovel from the company Yeacool. Now before I get too far, I'd like to say thank you very much to the people at Yeacool who have provided this product for review. Now as I mentioned, inside this little pouch here is a unique shovel. There are other multi-tool and multi-purpose sort of combination items out there, and there are other multi-tool shovels out there, but there are a ton of features jam-packed into this little kit here. Now I am actually pretty excited about this. Now in the past I have looked at another product from Yeacool. So here you'll see a multi-tool hatchet that they developed. It is actually overall a pretty good tool. It performed reasonably well for me. So when the people at Yeacool suggested me taking a look at their shovel, I was definitely interested. Now the first thing I can say is I have already taken this out, I've already assembled it, and I'm actually pretty excited to take a look at this. It was my original plan to come out here today, completely process a fire using only this shovel, but it's a little bit windy today. I mean, it dies down from time to time, but when it picks up, there's a good amount of wind. I really want to be responsible, and I don't want to leave a fire here, and I certainly don't want to create a fire that's out of control. So I think what I'm going to do is go through all the paces, kind of go through the entire process. I'm going to use this shovel as if I was going to start a fire, get all the way to that point, but pretty much cut it off there. And there's a whole bunch of other things to do with this shovel as well. And if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. So as we get into it and opening this kit, the first thing I'm going to say is this overall fabric here seems to be somewhat of a nylon. Now it's not a heavy Cordura or anything like that. It's a little bit on the cheaper side. It is a type of nylon along the lines of maybe kind of like a Becker sheath or a top sheath or something like that. Maybe just a touch thinner, but it is somewhat along those lines. And opening it up inside, you'll see that the shovel is presented in this pouch here. Now there's basically 5 sleeves that hold this in place. There's a couple of smaller, thinner sleeves. I think that's just kind of them bundling up the fabric here to make the pockets for the rest of the parts of the shovel. And just finalizing my thoughts on the pouch here, it does have some webbing in the back. Now it is not MOLLE, it's a little bit bigger than that. They could potentially have made this MOLLE compatible. However, I think the intent here is basically the ability to run this through a belt or something like that. The zippers seem to function overall plenty fine, so for its given intended purpose, this pouch is certainly suitable. But now getting into the actual components of the shovel, you'll see there are multiple handle sections in each one of the pouches here. So sliding out all the handle sections and then pulling out the actual head of the shovel. And this pretty much at that point makes up the bulk of the kit. Now I just want to show one final detail inside the front pouch here. There is some multi-tool instructions. But the first thing that really caught my attention is the fact that all of these components feel to be very sturdy, very well made, good heavy duty stuff. I believe this is likely a type of, I would believe, aluminum. I'm not positive of that. I can't find the information. I'm going to try to reach out at the people at Yeacool to verify that for sure, but I believe this in general is primarily made of aluminum, some steel pieces, and then in other cases some rubber and things like that. Now as we get into this, these handle sections for the most part are reasonably interchangeable, so they could go in a number of different configurations. Now there is a basic configuration that is set up in here based on what Yeacool's intentions are. However, I've come up with what I think is going to work a little bit better for me. So the first thing here, taking a look at the actual bottom butt and handle section, here you have this pommel end, a good strong looking tip. It's not overly sharp, it's not really, I would say, a pronounced tip. It's a little more blunt, but that has a nice overall point on it and definitely could do some crushing or breaking or anything like that. Now you really have to look deep into all of the little nooks and crannies in this tool because there is a ton of equipment in here. So as we open this up, you will notice this here is a flashlight. So threading that on, you'll see this flashlight has a little tactical mode. It has a high and a low mode with a little twist. This flashlight actually works very well. We're going to take a look at this a little bit later on, and I'm going to roll in some footage to show you how it overall performs. But then in the rest of the handle here, there are some bits, and then opening this up and exposing here, there is an actual wire saw. So a wire saw, kind of cool. I think it's neat that they're able to utilize literally every little piece of space in here, and that threads together pretty well. Now as I continue to go through here, a little bit of a reverse thread here and exposing on the bottom of this, on the underside, there is a compass, and it actually appears to be reasonably well moving. There is a small bubble in there, so a fluid-filled compass. So as I mentioned, I've already taken a look at this. One of the things I did right away is I greased up all of the threads. I wanted to make sure that each and every one of the threads on this kit would move very easily and work very well and be protected. That's the thing about some of these multi-tools. You may not go into all these different sections all the time, so to have some grease on there and to keep it overall well lubricated, I think is going to be a long-term advantage. But let's just say, for example, you didn't want the bits. I think this container here on the end would make a nice overall kit. And even looking at it, I feel as though there may still be a little bit of space left over in there. So for me, you could make a real nice fire kit, put some good tinder and things like that if you wanted to convert this to more of a wilderness application. But continuing on, this handle piece here, as you unthread this portion, nicely threaded, reveals a knife and actually a fish scaler. It kind of looks like a saw. You could probably do some little bits of sawing with that. You could definitely make some notches, but this actually is reasonably nice. Seems to be pretty sharp right out of the box, which is great. And one advantage that I see this time around over the actual multi-tool hatchet is the threaded part on this tool is metal. The last time we got our hands on one of these, it was plastic, and that was one of my beefs. So the fact that this one is metal is definitely a great upgrade. But threading it on, you'll see this goes on nicely. You just need to be a little bit careful with the blade in your hands to make sure you thread that on carefully. But it gives you a good overall handle and grip so that you can get to work with the knife. Now continuing on to the next segment, unthreading this side, you will see that this has a whistle and a fire steel. So the interesting thing is the threads on this are the identical same threads as on the knife. So you do have the ability to kind of mix and match this a little bit depending on what works for you. And also taking a look that here, if I go to thread this in, this is now whistle side out, but then taking it and flipping it around and getting it in place and threading it in, it is now fire steel out. So I like that. I like the idea that these are a little bit interchangeable. You can kind of flip this stuff around. It all indexes into place. You can put it in a number of different handle segments, which works out very well. And just to show that each one of these handle segments is threaded on the inside as well as the outside. So again, very versatile. So I could pick this handle segment, thread that in. I could pick this handle segment, thread it in. You do need to be a little bit careful how this all fits together, but you definitely can make it work and integrate. Now this here is a glass breaker or ice breaker. It kind of can do some chipping and hard use. I'm going to put this to the test and see if it survives a little bit of a test here. But again, the idea being that you can thread this into any one of these handle segments to do some smashing tasks. Now the head here is one of the most important pieces of this tool. Granted, the rest of that is all good and important, but to me, this head is going to be make or break whether or not this is a viable system. So the first thing I can say is this collar retainer is a machined aluminum. The threads feel to be excellent. The overall ability for this to move up and down smoothly definitely works well, and I can say that it locks up into place, pushes well against this washer here, and seems to hold the tool firmly firmly in place. Now there is just a touch of movement with the shovel head in this locked position, but you'll see once we get it in the other users' positions, it doesn't necessarily have that play. And then the pick side of this has the ability to pull nails or things like that. This has in the shovel head a couple of little hex keys, has a saw on one side, semi-sharpened shovel head on the spade, and then an actual sharpened edge on the side. And it is very beefy and reinforced. So as I start to put this together for field use, I'm trying to think about how I intend on using it. Now the key to me would be not having to pull literally the entire shovel apart to configure your tools while you're out there. I want to get this in a configuration that makes it so that I only need to unthread one or maybe two sections to use the tools that I need. I know that I want to ultimately have the butt end all the way at the back. I know that I need the shovel head at this end. That stuff's obvious. But how do I put this together the rest of the way to really make it work? So the first thing for me is to be able to get to my knife without too much difficulty, and to get to my flashlight without too much difficulty. So I'm basically going to take the flashlight segment and introduce it into the knife segment, because that to me is going to be the quickest and easiest way to get to work with the knife and get to my flashlight if I need it. Now I can't have conflict with the knife, so the knife for me has to go into the spare tube, that kind of middle section, and then threading that in, no problem there. So now that I have that done, at this point, I can get my ferro rod and whistle into place. Now I want to protect my ferro rod. I feel as though the whistle is going to be good and durable, but hard to say with the ferro rod, so I'm going to put the ferro rod to the inside. So now threading that into place, the good news is it does not conflict with the knife on the inside. So I can take this and thread it all the way down into place, and that works plenty fine for me. Now continuing to move on, at this point I'm going to take the extra handle section, thread it on, and that gives me a second handle where I need it. Moving on to the icebreaker, ice chipper, glass breaker, whatever you want to call it, I basically want this to be on this segment. Now, could you potentially put the knife in here? Yes, and that's what Yeacool suggests to do. But for me, that's not going to work as well. I don't need all this handle on the knife, but it would be nice to have it kind of on this icebreaker to do some work. So that's what my intention is. Now, I don't think there's going to be any real reason to worry about the extra handle length with this particular type of tool. I could see if it was something that had torque on it and they were worried about kind of creating damage to the handle, but something like this where you're striking straight down doesn't seem to really affect it in my opinion. So that to me is how I'm setting everything up, just short of putting on the head of the shovel. But now getting this into place, being careful not to cross thread these threads here. That does go in quite easy, threads itself right in into place, and that glass breaker there should fit nice and easy on the inside. And so at this point, that is my final configuration. Getting ready now to start doing some work. So I'm going to get this shovel head into position. And here you go. So making sure that this collar is nice and tight so there's no slop. That's going to help to prevent potential damage as this is being used. And you'll notice now that the head of the shovel is quite firm. Just the slightest little bit of movement, but that is perfectly fine.